everybody. I'm sending you my best greetings from Switzerland. I was asked to write a short story about women's rights and business from a feminist perspective. Instead of presenting you a story of one woman fighting for her rights, I would like to present you a political experiment, let's say, in Switzerland, which is still going on, but which will have a global impact, inshallah. I will hope so. The Responsible Business Initiative, it is called. An initiative is a civil society activity. It's a political instrument. You can also Google it. It's about changing or generating the legal basis. So this is about a new law which wants multinationals to respect human rights and the environment in their activities, not in Switzerland, but abroad. Under this Responsible Business Initiative, companies will be legally obliged to incorporate respect for human rights and the environment in all their business activities. This is a mandatory due diligence which will also be applied to Swiss-based companies, but their activities abroad, and this is quite explosive. It is based on the United Nations guiding principles on business and human rights. These companies must take effective measures, that's what the initiative demands, measures to address the potentially negative impact identified and report in a transparent manner on the risks identified and the measures taken. These due diligence obligations for the Swiss-based firms will be liable for human rights abuses and environmental violations caused abroad by companies under their control. This provision will enable victims of human rights violations and environmental damage to seek redress in Switzerland. Moreover, when a company can credibly demonstrate to the court that it's carried out adequate due diligence and that it took all necessary measures to prevent the violations, it will be exempted from liability. The initiative therefore has a preventive effect as it provides companies with an incentive to comply with their obligations. But my question, from a feminist perspective, what about women's rights? Don't they need an extra reflection? Because I ask myself whether women's rights are not being neglected somehow. So I ask Cecile Bühlmann. She is a former member of Swiss Parliament for the Green Party and is member of the Responsible Business Initiative Committee. What do you think about the feminist relevance? I asked her. Well, she says gender justice should be a central goal, but unfortunately it is not explicit enough in the text. And so it is missing in the chain of argumentation. Certainly, what is needed is a feminist reflection and an intellectual effort that brings us closer to the connections between corporate responsibility and gender justice. Even if human rights are respected, it does not mean that the company, its contractors and suppliers automatically take a close look at whether gender inequalities are maybe becoming even worse. There's no automatism, as we know. So Cecile continues saying, civil society organizations and international NGOs have begun to look closely and have discovered that the activities of corporation not only destroy the environment but also have drastic consequences on the everyday lives of women, men and children, but not equally. They raise their voices and intervene in political decision-making processes. Women are the main providers. They guarantee the care work, as we know, and ultimately the responsibility for the water and food supply of households usually lies with women. And to this, and comparative studies prove it, that on average, women are more affected by poverty and have fewer opportunities to live than men. What does it mean then if a company destroys the balance in a specific region and is also destroying or is preventing women from having access to their water, to the fields, etc., or also to the markets? The lack of cash to buy good food to ensure the nutrition of the household members is a big problem of women, and access to land is traditionally limited for women in many places, says Cecile. And this is becoming worse, becoming worse when companies are occupying huge parts of region, and also destroying the balance of the ecological balance. The exploitation of raw materials by multinational companies makes the situation really much worse, and there are many, many examples. You may also know some of these examples. The coal mines, I don't know what happens to women living around and working inside. Self-sufficiency is being limited, and the conditions under which care work is provided are most precarious, and in general companies are making them much worse than before. It's not just the Swiss company, but all the suppliers and the companies being contracted by the Swiss company. So it's still usually women who stay because they care for their families, for the households. States are, so CEDAW, the Women's Rights Convention, they are obliged to assure that women's lives are not hampered, are not, the rights of women are respected. But how can we measure this impact the companies have on women if we don't even have the indicators, if it's not an issue? And Cecile says what we demand is that the reported data is gender sensitive. That means that all documents of these reports are gender specific. The impact have to be analyzed from a gender perspective. It's also a task of us, of the organizations and of individuals specialized in gender issues to support companies by asking the right questions. It's about the good indicators we have to look for. And there are two main issues which really have to be observed carefully. One is, how do companies distribute their profits? Is there also a gender approach in distributing it? Where then should it go if women are mainly responsible for care work? And the other question is not just the women in the surroundings, the local population, but it's also women working in the companies. How is the company obliged to report on the working conditions, especially from a gender perspective, according to the ILO principles? Insurance system, tax system, how do they consider the specific needs of women working in these companies? So, in fact, it is extremely important for us as gender expert or interested in gender issues, feminists, to really look for the best indicators, the best key questions which have to be then explored and answered, maybe based on good studies. You all are able to do such studies, so please don't hesitate and start asking for money to then go and dig deeply into the fields and the situation of women living around in the region where companies are exploiting the environment and the people's workforce, and also women, if there are, who are working themselves in the companies. So thank you so much. And I think from a feminist perspective, these aspects can really be examined. We know all a lot of good questions. We know where to look at. So let us propose some schemes for evaluation, because ultimately it is the economic logic behind corporate practice that determines the gender dimensions also. This is a monstrous task. But first, the corporate responsibility initiative must be accepted in Switzerland, and we will have a result in November. So please wait for the November to come, and then we be in touch in order to develop a really good list of feminist indicators exploring the work and the performance of companies. Thank you so much, and have a very interesting conference. I hope next time I'll be face to face with you. Bye.